9 o'clock, and the Public Works Committee is now coming to order. Roll call, please.
Chair Childress,
Here.
Vice Chair Zay,
Here.
Member Desart,
Here.
Member Galassi,
Here.
Member Garcia,
Here.
Member Oza.
Here.
All right, that being said, we'll move right into chair's comments. I have none at this time. We'll go to public comments. Public comments on the Heritage Gallery is encouraged to be given under item 9A. I think we moved it to.
It'll be 9A.
9A on the agenda after the presentation and discussion. Public Works Committee has received public comment via our online portal. Per the board policy, those comments were provided to the members yesterday so they could be reviewed. And comments submitted electronically will be included into the minutes of this meeting.
With that, is there any public comment on anything other than the Heritage Gallery? Hearing none, back to you, Chair.
Mine will be on the Heritage Gallery, but I would still like to speak now.
You'd like to speak now?
Okay,
Please be advised that public comments are limited to 3 minutes in length.
good morning, Chairman, Vice Chair, board members, Nick, Tim, staff, and residents. My name is Philip Buchanan. I'm speaking today on behalf of the Heritage Gallery Committee. First, I want to thank you again for your support for this important project. 10 months ago, I addressed this committee at the start of the process, when a schedule for key milestones was agreed upon. As part of that schedule, Taylor Studios was set to tour the facility early on, at which point the gallery committee could have engaged with them. A workshop with Taylor Studios was planned in May or June of 2024, but the gallery committee never had the opportunity to meet with them. The schematic design was originally scheduled for presentation in June or July, but when it finally arrived last fall, it was a complete failure. As a result, the design process had to start over, a revised schedule was created, and a new design is now being submitted. Again, all without Taylor Studios ever meeting the Heritage Gallery Committee. Had Taylor Studios engaged with the Gallery Committee as planned in 2024, much of this could have been avoided. Now, Taylor Studios is scheduled to be here March 3 and 4, and they will finally meet with the Gallery Committee. We are eager to provide the necessary guidance and direction to ensure this project aligns with its intended vision. Moving forward, I hope that all remaining milestones will be completed in true partnership with the Gallery Committee. Thank you for your time and attention.
All right, we're gonna move right into approval of minutes. 25/4/25, Public Works Committee minutes. The chair will entertain a motion.
Second.
It has been properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? Being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Claims reports, 25/4/26. Chair will entertain a motion to,
Second.
get it to the payment of claims, Public Works and Facilities Management. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Joint purchasing agreement. Chair will entertain a motion to approve the recommendation of PW 125. Recommendation for the approval of the contract purchase order 274.
So moved.
For
Second.
one 2025 Ford F-350 4x4 Super Chassis Cab with service body attachment for DuPage County Public Works for the period of February 11, 2025 to November 30, 2025 for the total contract not to exceed $78,859. Discussion, Mary, and then
I think this is a question we can't answer, but I'll throw it out there. Tariffs. Are we when we purchase a vehicle, are we actually contracting for an actual vehicle that exists right now? Or is this a future purchase?
This is an actual purchase of an actual vehicle, so the tariffs,
It's good,
for right now, this purchase
it's good.
is good. Now, the question is, future
The
purchases,
question,
we
yeah,
shall see.
okay. All right, so this is good. If we've got a purchase price and the vehicle is there, we are good.
Now, there always could be something where, and we've had that on purchases before, where the dealer pulls the rug out from under us on, we do this and they're like, oh, we can't get it. I mean, we've run into that before. That's always a risk.
Okay, but then they would go under they find one someplace.
Hopefully,
But we're
hopefully they
tied to
would.
this.
We,
Or
right
they're
now,
tied to this.
we're
Okay.
confident we would get this vehicle.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Churchill.
We haven't heard that in years,
What's that?
that we're confident we're gonna get a vehicle.
Yeah,
Thank you, Churchill. My question is,
It being a problem and to try to come back in.
minor in importance, but my question is, why are the dates from February to November? I mean, like, are we gonna order it in February and plan to get it by November?
So-
Why just such a long period of dates?
I'll turn Sean for the delivery on this one.
Yeah, so the lead time, this is for a chassis. Once we take delivery of the chassis from Ford, then they send it to an outfitter with service body on. So putting it out until November, that timeframe is somewhat fluid, so we don't know. So we just give them a contract through November.
I will tell
We
you,
get Delivery before.
we won't need this amount of time, but it gives us plenty of runway in case if it takes a little bit longer.
Okay, thank you.
Next item up.
but
Oh, sorry. Chip.
Thank you. Last time I
apologize.
checked, most Fords are made in the United States.
I think most of them are, I don't know, some of the parts,
Okay,
there
so
might be an
tariff
issue
we
with
have
wouldn't
a
really,
big presence in Mexico and Canada.
so a tariff wouldn't really go into place on that.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
will.
Well,
They have a lot of.
we're looking at
Detroit girl here, they've got a lot of presence in Canada and
Canada and
Mexico.
Mexico.
so we'll see.
Any other questions before we move on? Next item up.
Vote.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Background is still.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. FMP 225, recommendation for the approval of a contract to Gray Bar Electric Company to furnish and deliver electrical and lighting products for the power plant, lighting and fixture replacements for facilities management for the period of February 12th,
Second,
2025 through August 11th, 2025, for a total contract not to exceed $37,340.32. Any discussion on that?
This is the one we just talked about in environmental, that over in a power plant, the payback for this is something like 15 months, if I remember correctly. So there's a really quick payback on this one for savings.
Okay, any other discussion? Being none, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item, informational. DEP 325, recommendation for the approval of a contract purchase with Accelera, Inc., managed application services to provide support, with, permitting software for building and zoning, transportation, stormwater, and the Public Works Department for the period of February 21st, 2025 through February 20th, 2026, for the contract not to exceed $203,674.36. Any discussion? Being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. With that, we'll move right into our presentation. We have, Heritage,
Taylor?
Taylor, you have-
We got a public comment first.
Oh, I thought we did.
So the last sign up
I
for
thought that
public
was
comment
the
was
C.
Michelle
Oh, okay.
I only wanted to sign up in case something happened like last time where I wanted to speak and didn't sign up.
Michelle is from Heritage, from Historical Society, over there at Historical
Any
Museum.
additional comments for public comment on the Heritage Gallery?
All right, we'll let Taylor take over from here.
I'm sorry, isn't that item C on this?
He moved it to 9A.
Okay.
Sorry, I'll give a brief intro. I know we got a lot to talk about in here. Just a brief update. So at the last initial schematic design presentation, the committee wanted to reiterate our priorities. We sent out a or survey to board members, reviewed it again in committee, put together a feedback that we then gave to Taylor Studios to guide them in this second round. This is the response to that after reading through your priorities as documented. I'll turn it over to Morgan and her team. If you have any other questions, we can circle back on more details after the presentation. But Morgan, go ahead. Thanks.
Hey everybody, nice to see you again. We're excited to share our revamp of our design with you all. So our plan today is to run through this rather quickly so we don't take up too much of your time. But these documents are available for you guys to have a deeper dive and read through if you have the availability to do so. And then we have left a little bit of time at the end for some comments and questions that you guys might have. Jeff, can I have you jump to page 4, please?
Find wish list.
Yeah. So just so we don't keep eating up time. So we took your guys' wish list that came from the survey, and we really use that as the cornerstones of what we put the design around. But just to keep in mind that this is also the very, very early stages. So we still have lots of fine tuning to put into this, and we can include or remove any items that you don't agree with in content wise, or we can add some things if you feel like something is missing. So this is definitely still an open, fluid concept discussion in terms of the content and the exhibits themselves. So I'm going to hand this over to Pete, and he'll walk through the central theme. So Jeff, if you could turn to the next slide, I think we're ready to go.
Thank you, and my apology for my face not showing up. I had 3 IT people in here, and there seems to be a glitch. All our exhibit designs start with a central theme that kind of directs us as to where to go. And so our central theme is, throughout time, the people of DuPage County have continually and successfully adapted to change. The change came fast and sometimes slow with the glaciers, but I want you to notice that the 4th word in there is the people of DuPage County, because those are the folks that we need to highlight, we want to highlight, and you would like also for us to highlight. So that is the big overarching theme. We break them down into separate themes that support that theme. And you'll notice in sub-theme 1, sub-theme 2, sub-theme 3, and sub-theme 4, there is an element of the citizens, the residents, or the human communities. And so we are very much about putting the individuals of DuPage into the exhibit. And you can, there's a completed outline that you can look in depth more easily than the time we have here today. Next slide, please.
So looking at this slide, I'm going to give a brief introduction of the flow of this exhibit, and then I'll turn it back over to Pete to talk through kind of the detailed breakdown of where all the elements are. So as you look at this, we have revamped this design to be a timeline-based structure. However, we wanted to go deeper than a basic timeline. Timelines are really, really great for overviews, but the downside is that you can't always find the content that relates to you specifically. So for this design, we wanted to combine a timeline with an opportunity for deeper dives into specific content that gets very detailed. So as visitors enter from either direction, I'm going to, for this presentation, say the southwest, they'll see the timeline content of this exhibit circle around. In this plan view, the green arrows represent the flow of the timeline chronologically. So at 1A, we start with the glaciers, and by the time we've circled all the way around to 1B, we're talking about the contemporary folks who make DuPage County the diverse and vibrant place that it is. In addition to having a timeline circling the outside of these kiosk structures, the inside of each is a deep dive into content. And we've also paired them in a way that a older timeline element chronologically pairs with how it's related to a more contemporary event. So we really wanted to focus on the cause and effect as the county developed. And I'm gonna give it back to Pete to talk a little more about that.
So one of our philosophies after your feedback was the best way to show the history of DuPage is through its people. And so people are in each one of these. If we can concentrate just for a second so you can see kind of an example at hand. If you look at number 3, you have 3A and 3B. So number 3 corresponds to subtheme 3 in your outline packet. And 3A also is broken down in your outline packet. And so what we have here is the reason these two are joined together is that this is a group of kiosks that we have termed Fighting for Change. And so down on 3A, you're going to have separation from Cook County. And then on 3B, you're going to have much more modern example of fighting for change through the Underground Railroad, suffrage movement, and midnight raid. So that's what we're trying to do, is group these things together. So it's not a timeline that goes from trains to people to landscape to water reclamation. A straight up timeline that way without topics, it gets a little bit, wait a second, they were just talking about changes, our trains. And so we try to group these things together, and each one has a partner later in time. If you look at 4A and 4B, transforming goods to market, well, we start talking about plank roads, and then we go into railroads and highways and how that affected agriculture. And so you'll see that each of these are related, so that the visitor will be able to make more sense of it than if they were just going down a straight up timeline with all of these different topics that they're talking about. No one's going to be able to keep track of them. So people can also go to what interests them.
So we can go on to the next page. So in this view, you are looking at how these kiosks appear as you're walking past them. They are freestanding contemporary structures whose focus is entirely on the content, on the graphics. So as visitors are walking past, the exteriors of all of these, which are coded in whites and grays, are the timeline elements. And if someone were interested in, say, like Pete brought up the Midnight Raid content, they'd be able to walk inside and read the inside of the kiosk, which is coded in different blues and yellows, and get more depth of information about that. So we're really catering to people with different amounts of time, different amounts of interest, and different areas of special desire to learn about. They can get a complete story from just the timeline, or they can get a complete story from any individual kiosk or any individual pair. There's really a lot of flexibility to how you take in the exhibit. In terms of design, we really, again, wanted the content to be the star, so the posts holding up the graphics are quite minimal. Their colors are all pulled from the DuPage County colors, and the only pop of modern design we wanted to throw in here for your interest was a reflective laminate on one side of one post of the kiosks. We really wanted to create the sense of seeing oneself in DuPage County, and to throw in that moment of bouncing the light and making the space feel even bigger and brighter. Additionally, in this view, you're looking at the option of our design that includes all additions and alternates. In our deliverable, you'll see that we have a list of a kind of a menu list of items that can be added as the project progresses or later in time. And these items are all the digital interactives and the large adhesive map of the county that would go on the brick wall. We'll talk about these a little more as we go further, but I wanted you to be aware that this is the complete look with every addition and alternate. On the next page, you can get a little more detail, just look through this in your own time. And then the following page after that shows kind of a map of all of the adults or additions and alternatives. So to talk through them briefly, Additional alternative number 1 is a video that would trace the glacial changes in DuPage County, from when the glaciers were formed all the way to how the landscape was formed as they moved away. Add-alt number 2 is a video exploring the transportation development of the county, as Pete said, from plank roads to railways to highways. Add-alt number 3 is a touchscreen deep dive into the Midnight Raid, where visitors would be faced with the touchscreen and would be able to select an area of content to learn more information about. And adult number 4 is also a touchscreen interactive that explores diverse groups in DuPage County and the role they've played in history in a much deeper and more detailed way than we can fit on just a graphic. And then adult number 5 is a large screen we're proposing to be a calendar of contemporary events in the county that will be changeable. And the final adult is an adhesive map of the county that we feel really helps visitors place themselves in the space and connect to where they live and how they feel about it. Next page, please. This is a view without the adults, and as you can see, it is still a very complete, full, and fulfilling design, even if being able to add those isn't something that comes along for a few years. And we can go down 2 pages, please. So this is just a very brief look at inspiration images. So on the left is the style of posts that the kiosks will have. The 2 middle images are small swatches of the laminates we're proposing that are taped to one of those posts, so you can kind of see how those colors and textures interact. And the image on the right is a sense of how the space will feel as visitors weave in and out of kiosks. And then the following page takes a look at what some of those adults might look like. So an adhesive on brick will look like the left image with the archway, and the touchscreen interactives will look and work like the middle image where someone can walk right up and interact with a large 43-inch screen. And I'm going to turn that over to Katie to talk about graphics.
On the next page, so for the graphic design, we wanted to focus on kind of a flexibility and accessibility for a diverse audience with diverse content. And so we wanted to create a cohesive design that visually ties together the historical and modern elements of DuPage County's story. And we wanted it to be of interest to visitors just passing through, as well as visitors who really want to engage in the historical content for a longer time. The main colors uses blues pulled from the DuPage County's website, paired with a lot of the neutral cool tone grays, along with this like brighter yellow that can highlight key information. The fonts are a mix of serif and sans serif typefaces that blend kind of that classic historical feel with modern elements and allow for a clear hierarchy of information to be established while still being legible for a distance. On the next page, you can kind of see how these elements start to come together. So this page specifically shows what the timeline panels on the outsides of the kiosk structures will look like. And so it shows kind of where the timeline will be using this yellow element throughout. So from each panel to each panel, the yellow line connects as our timeline through time, and then events from the timeline can pull off of this line. This grid-like design allows for a lot of flexibility so that we can show different events through time in different ways or show more or less within this grid structure. And the background has this kind of nice interweaving gray and white design, kind of showing through the interweaving of history, as well as reflecting light within the space itself. On the next page, you can see the inside graphics of the kiosks. And so this is the deeper dive, as if you're kind of deeper diving into one of the content pieces or one of the events. And so that timeline yellow element comes through in all of these panels, kind of weaving you through the different stories and different ways we can either show artifacts or photos or different stories themselves.
Right. So that is it for our presentation. So now I believe, Jeff, we want to open the floor for some comments from the attendees.
So as staff member Ozad, we have Garcia and Katie.
Did you see me?
Yes, you first.
Oh, that one over here.
And then, Member Che,
Okay.
you remember F.
So my first question is this, you said this is a complete look and it's mostly kiosks. So there's no room for artifacts. It's all one dimensional, really not visually appealing when it's just one dimensional. Could you talk to that?
Yeah, so we felt that artifacts were best represented as reproductions on the graphics, simply because this space itself is a little rough for artifacts. It gets a lot of unfiltered UV light, and artifact cases themselves are a very, very costly element. So the way we could maximize the design and protect the artifacts in the best way possible was by placing them as parts of the graphics for you.
Okay, thank you, Morgan. So it's one dimensional. What is the scope of Taylor? Obviously design, but are they also in charge of content? Because I'm not comfortable with their content. So were they hired to just work on the design or the content as well?
So right now they have the content outline, which is basically
I
just
see
the
that.
list and menu of
Right.
possible topics. The March 4th special call where we would have our focus groups. That's where prioritizing that content, the stories, the people we want highlighted in the gallery, that's when we would reach out to the public, stakeholders. And that's when we would have that interactive back and forth, kind of establishing all the deep dives we want to go into. So that's kind
So
of,
is it part of Taylor's
yeah,
job
so,
is content?
yes, assembling all that content. And then by the end of concept design, they'll have those highlights and priorities. And Morgan, you can speak to this too, but highlighted.
No, that's fine. You're saying that they do have you're saying, yes, they do have a say in the
Correct.
content.
Yeah.
And I just want to say, I know we're all stakeholders in the Heritage Gallery, but some of us, Philip Buchanan, Becky Simon, the Craigheads, Tom and Susan, Michael Childress, we have been involved in this since 2019. And where we hit the brick wall was that we didn't get funded. So when we finally got $150,000 to proceed and move forward, we were thrilled. And I'm not thrilled with this, I'll tell you right now. The timeline based shows me that they can Google, frankly. We don't want a geologic history of DuPage County. We don't want a natural landscape of DuPage County. We don't want glaciers or contemporary people of DuPage County. What we want, and we had a meeting on Saturday morning, and here are just some notes from what people said. We want either like issues like sundowning or the Underground Railroad or Chinese immigrants helped build the railroads here in DuPage County. We want things on the timeline and then we focus on people. Whereas right now it's kind of a Hall of Fame of DuPage people. We don't necessarily want to go back to the Hall of Fame. We want to, Nancy Chen, for example, one of our from the Chinese community, she talked about bringing the rich heritage Chinese food to DuPage County. And with the first restaurant in DuPage County, Chinese restaurant in DuPage County was Tom's. Tom Craig had talked about sundowning. Joseph Standing Bear is talking about, the Native American heritage. My point is that why would we talk about glaciers and tall grass when we have so much rich history where we can identify people who made DuPage County the way it is now? I know you all are stakeholders, but we've been working on this for 6 years and it really got some new life when we got some funding. So, I'm not one to hold my tongue and I'm not right now, but my question is that, Chair Childress brought this up this morning and I appreciate that. He said, if you were doing a design in your kitchen and you had the people come back and you were telling them what you want, and they weren't doing a good job, at what point do you cut bait? I don't know how much Taylor's been paid, but do we need to start with a new design studio? Because, even talking about the contemporariness of some of these, it's the Heritage Gallery. There should be no contemporary portions of the Heritage Gallery. This gallery is to spotlight the history of DuPage and the people who made DuPage special. And I guess I'll stop right there. I'm sorry I can't hold my tongue. This is too important. Thank you.
Member Cahill?
Oh, well, was taking a totally different direction because I personally liked the presentation today. I thought it was excellent. I was looking at the funding here. No one went over this yet. Because I didn't understand, if you talk about the budget, they had the base budget and then they went into the additional alternative one budget. So I was just like adding up the numbers thinking, okay, so for 2025, the base budget was $75,000. Then the project additional budget was 74,300. Does that mean it's 150,000 under that scenario for 2025? And then if there's interactive screens, it's another, I don't know, 45,000. I was asking someone at Taylor to explain their projected budget sheets. And then each year you can see in 2026, there's a specific budget. So we're talking like $150,000 a year to maintain this gallery and these interactive screens.
Sorry, I'll let Morgan fill in. So that, I think that's just an escalation. Like if we don't do it until that year, that was just factoring in inflation. Should you do it in a later year?
Yep, that is correct. So it's not a maintenance fee. It's simply if you guys need some additional time to secure funding, just to let you know like what the cost of inflation would be from our side, just so that we're transparent in that with you guys. So the base budget of the 75 is for the graphics and the posts, as Emma had shared in the presentation. But then we've kind of laid out two options for the interactive screens. We kind of gave a basic option where there was no interactivity on the screens, but it gives you the option to have a slideshow presentation that could highlight a lot of your members in more deep dive of your community. Or there's the second adult option that has the interactivity that lets you have the touchscreens and really interact individually with each of those screens and the content included in them.
So what you're saying is that if it was interactive, it would be 150,000 versus 75,000. Because it's 75,000 base and then additional budget 74,300, so it's 150 if we went to interactive, or we went to yeah.
Correct.
Okay, and then an additional amount for the third option. Like 45,000 digital screen plus Glacier's interactive, that's an additional 45,000.
And then, so if you guys went with the interactive screens, it'd be the 75,000 from the first line of the base budget, and then it would just be the total of the adult two. If I think it's on the second page.
So 111,300.
Yes.
Like 200,000 if for that budget in 2025.
Correct.
I think we need to review those numbers.
Yeah, I think previously we had discussed, the allocated budget so far. I think that's why they said the base is, they're trying to stay within the like 150-ish we have total right now allocated. And if we look to phasing in the future, I know we discussed, how we're going to source these screens, whether IT could help with that, whether GIS could help with the maps. I mean, there may be ways to get these numbers down now, once we kind of move forward with the concept. And that would be in the next round of budgeting.
Okay.
Thank you.
Go
Go ahead. We'll go around this way.
And we'll get Jim next.
Okay. So my comments are, I am not a fan of this design. It looks like I'm at a bike path trailhead. There is nothing, there is so much space that we can utilize up and down. I used to complain about the current gallery, the way it is, but I've taken pictures. It's so much more eloquent than what we have here because they use the full space all the way from the ceiling to the floor. And the problem with the current Heritage Gallery is it's static. But did we look into just maybe taking what's there out and putting in interactive screens? It would be so much more, so much cheaper. And because I don't think there's anything really wrong with it. It's just that it's static and it's only highlighting a very select number of people. But it's the content, the way it's presented is actually pretty nice. And if we want to just take what we have and update it, there's so much that I want to change in the Taylor Studios presentation that I'm willing to scrap it and then just kind of
build on what we have, make it more interactive, use our own IT staff to do some of that stuff, and then curate, you know, the real content. I think the problem is the content, but there's also the problem of, I don't then think the aesthetics, given the space that we have, is the level of sophistication that we should have.
And members A,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, this is exactly the reason why government shouldn't be involved in historical museums. I mean, you've been talking about, remember to start talking about, it's been doing it since 2019, a small group who are not curators, who are not have background in history, who not have any of
We do
that.
have people from the museums in DuPage County on the group.
Okay, but then you were talking about what you wanted. That's your personal opinion. Now, I kind of like the glacier thing and like about the history of it. And we talk about, we have so much room. We don't. That is a small piece of real estate there. I mean, it seems like we want everything, but we have a very small area to do this. And again, they're not happy with what we're going. I mean, at what point are we going to keep kicking this down the line? At one point, are we going to decide to just, hey, why don't we have a curator come here and talk to us about the history of it, of DuPage, and what we need? Or if we don't need this, I mean, Nick brought up the other day, we actually do own a historical museum, don't we? That needs help. That again, I think something like this, and again, I want, I'm all for promoting the history of DuPage and the diversity and everything else. But again, who's gonna come to this? Wouldn't it be the money better spent if we went to the Wheaton location and did this? And then we're gonna spend this much money on this project, which is a lot. If we want to do the alternatives and we want interactives and we want all that, wouldn't it be better spent where people would go? If we're gonna do surveys, I'm hoping if we do a survey and one of the questions will be, will you come park at the 421 building and see this display? I mean, because we're not a destination for people just coming. We're a destination for people coming here for a purpose. They're coming to the clerk's office for a marriage license or a birth certificate. They're coming to the treasurer's office for paying their taxes. They're going to recorder's office to get recorded deed or something. They might be coming for a meeting, but we see our attendance. We don't have that many people in our attendance. At times we do. But again, I'd rather put it in Wheaton where more people would see this and spend the money that way. And then I would hope we would do a survey to our employees and ask them what they want there. Do they want this, or do they want an area where they could sit and have tables and be able to get away from their office for a little bit, maybe eat their lunch there, maybe have a timeout, they're having a tough day. We talked about these other little areas that we were gonna get where they can go and do that. Maybe this would be an area for them to go to. So that's my opinion. And again, Taylor's trying to get mixed reviews of what we're saying back and forth. And it's gotta be struggling for them to which way we wanna go on this. But again, you don't have this much. We can't have everything there. You're either gonna have static or you're gonna have some video, and yeah, who's gonna do the videos? Are they gonna produce the videos? Are we gonna produce the videos? Now you're talking staff time of our people. If we have our GSI people doing stuff, what are we doing at that point?
I have a share of concerns that I share with Mr. Zay. So first of all, we need to, who is our market for this? Basically, it's employees or people who are coming to visit. So I see this as kind of an adjunct function to the Historical Society, and I'm happy to support them as much as we can. But I think let's throw out 150,000 or under, I think we should definitely do something at this area because we can impart information. Personally, I live about 500 feet from a glacier. So I think part of this history is explaining why this was such a burden and wonderful place for people to come, be them Potawatomi 600 years ago, be it settlers, et cetera, and then the development of the railroad. So those are all historical things that are important to know. So I really like the format here, but my question is, it reminds me slightly of 100 years ago when I worked for Metra. I was in charge of putting all the signage on the stations, and that signage is still there 35 years later. And it was basically a modular system. And my question is, can these be changed? Could you do a new silk screen and, perhaps update it in 5 to 10 years? Because I really do like what it's talking about here. It talks about the history, it talks about some of the varied people. I think what would be really nice is to do the map on the wall, which I can't imagine is that expensive, and have a single screen that's running on a constant loop, a 2 to 3 minute video where you can include and update it yearly, where you can include, for instance, we heard from someone asking us to represent the Asian community. So we could talk about all the different groups that have come to DuPage in the last 200 years and just varied talk. That's where we could specifically talk about group situations and how various people have impacted, and even more currently, and who are the newer people in DuPage, et cetera. And that could be updated within yearly. But I think you have to look at basically the market for who's going to be here. Like, as Jim said, people maybe want to take a break at work, or they're walking through and they're going to stop for 5 minutes and look at something. So I don't think, I think it's really an adjunct. It's a really nice thing to update. Memorabilia can definitely go to the museum. That's a great place for that. But I think maybe put a bench in front of the TV screen if somebody's here for a couple of hours or whatever their business may be, they can take a break there, or we can have a couple of benches on the side. But I think as it stands, the main thing I would just want to know is the ability to update in X number of years and go with it. Because I don't think if we were to spend $150,000 or less, I think an update after 40 years is not out of, we've spent money on things that I've disagreed with for far more than $150,000. And I think it would be a really nice update, but I like what they've got here because it does the job for the market that we're trying to serve. And that's basically visitors. And we're not a destination for the historical element. So let's tell the story from glaciers to today, but it doesn't have to be a completely, totally comprehensive situation. It's something to be an adjunct or to be just a nice benefit. So anyway, but if you could answer my question about interchangeability for the screens.
I can actually, so the thought process was, and Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, the big screen we talked about would be, every month you have like Black History Month or Chinese Heritage Month, you have all those. The thought process would be that big screen would be updated for the current event going on with the history. So we would develop that programming over time, and that could be modified. All the standing stuff you see here would stay the same, but that screen could be updated monthly or weekly, whatever quarterly, whatever we want to do. But that would be the biggest change. And now all of this can be changed throughout. I mean, if it grows
Well, these are
stale
modular
and,
signs.
yeah, that's
obviously, they
easy.
can be-
But the screen is meant to be ever changing for whatever is important to the county for that period, that quarter, that year, that week. That would be, but we'd have to develop that programming. But once we have that library of programming, that could be, we could definitely switch it. That was kind of the
But now
thought.
you've just given me an idea because we could just put county board members in our photos and have those.
We want people to come look at it, not run the other way.
But Jim, it would be on a really big screen. Come on.
And just put
For the children.
But again, that would be, I guess, a decision we'd have to make in terms of who would take care of that. Would we have to have a contract for that, et cetera?
Well, it would be a
For the
matter of
screen.
developing the program. So that's something that once we get this all done for, I mean, the money you saw would build this and have the screen up. What we have to do is probably go out and develop a 5-minute program for this or a 5-minute program for that. That's something that we can build our library over time. And that would be what would be on the big screen. And that's something we could build a couple a year and you could have that. And, that's where we need to get the experts in, this particular area, or that particular area, and we could update that screen.
Would you not agree that a lot of the content issues would be worked out in the focus groups too?
Yeah.
Were you done? I'm not sure.
No, I haven't spoken yet, but thank you.
Okay.
Were you done, Mary?
I'm done.
Okay. I guess, I mentioned this the last time we had a meeting about this, that it is a concern of mine of how many people if we invest in this, how many people are actually going to enjoy it and learn from it versus going to the Heritage Gallery in Wheaton. So, you know, I like the idea, like some of the other members have mentioned, to have a big screen there, because I think what I'm hearing is we're kind of disagreeing on what's important. I also like the idea of the glacier. I mean, I thought that was interesting. I'm guessing you may have too.
Yeah.
So, you know, and if it's a TV screen that, you know, we had some seating around where the employees could enjoy it, because to me, they might be the ones that get the most out of it. It's such a bright, sunny space that we could utilize it to, you know, we're constantly talking about employee satisfaction and trying not to lose our employees. Like, if we made this a fun space to go and have a cup of coffee on a break with a friend, and then we can have ever-changing, you know, information on the TV screen. If we don't exactly agree on it right out of the gate, we can, you know, to your point, we can continuously update it and make it more relevant as the years go by. So I feel like we could improve the space with much less funding and have it just, you know, be a TV screen with a place for employees, and then utilize the remainder of this budget to enhance the Heritage Gallery with some of the artifacts and things like that.
The museum.
Or the museum, I'm sorry, the museum.
And I know that was the original thought would be the different exhibits you see right there on the screen now are kind of like a timeless exhibit, like the glaciers, that will always be 5, 10, 20 years from now, it's still gonna be relevant, but the screen would be what has to change constantly.
All right, I have member you, member Desart, and then member Rutledge.
Thank you, Chair. I really appreciate what you said, Nick, with regard to, you know, changing it up every month with regard to whatever theme month it is, Black Heritage Month, Asian Heritage Month, all that other stuff, because that is what I really want to see in this gallery. I think from the very, very beginning, we were all concerned that what we currently have does not reflect DuPage County, right? And so I just want to go back to that point, which is people who come to the seat of DuPage County here in Wheaton, we want them to see themselves reflected in the gallery. That's all I'm really asking for. I don't really care so much about the design aspects or the coloring, or I know that some people are very picky about, you know, how it's all displayed. And I do think that it needs to be some kind of multimedia screen, like you were saying, that one wall. I am more focused on the content, and I understand that by March 4, there will be more information, more groups to come in and talk about, you know, what's relevant. You know, 15% of Asians now live here. South Asians are like the fastest growing population in DuPage. There's 15% Hispanic, Latino population, on and on and on. I just want the content and the design to reflect the different demographics that we have in DuPage. The historical museum, I don't know if they have glaciers, if they have all of that changing. I'm just saying that this should just be an offshoot of the museum. It should not include everything that really should be in the historical museum. And I think members, they kind of talked about that too, which I agree upon. This is an offshoot. It's a very small section, and I just want it to be about the people of DuPage and how we are seen in there. That's all that I want. Thank you.
Member Rutledge.
Thank you, Chair. Just how you guys decide, you've all worked at this for a long time. I'm happy to defer to whatever you decide as far as design. And I do understand the mirrors, but as a photographer, there's so much direct light into that space that I worry about the mirrors, that they'll reflect that light back at people that are trying to look. I understand the concept, but I think in practice, the direct light could be problematic with that. So that's all I got.
Yeah, listening to all of you speak, I had a couple of thoughts. One is, I know Nick, somebody here told us fairly recently, how many people come through the 421 daily, weekly, monthly? I mean, we have numbers on that.
Absolutely.
And I was surprised by how many people, wasn't it like?
We have 10.
It was amazing. It averaged 421 people a day, and the address is 421.
Yeah, it's 421 a day.
Yeah, that was the number.
And that's a
That's how I
daily,
remember.
that's daily.
That's per key.
So if you're talking about an audience, there's 421 a day.
which I think is awesome.
I
Regarding,
think you rounded up just to make it 421.
regarding the screens that you were all talking about, one of the things that we thought would be great would be spoken histories, recording people doing spoken histories. And we do have people who can do those videos. Lynette Tilly Taylor has a rich history. There's so much she can tell us. Other historians throughout the county would be great on those screens for spoken history. Regarding changing the exhibit, we don't have a curator on staff. So one of the things we talked about on Saturday, for example, is we have several people from DuPage County Museums in our little group. And what we thought about is that if there's like 30 some museums in DuPage County, and if we could get a bigger buy-in from all of those museums, what we could do is have museums share like every year, every 6 months, whatever we decide, have museums come in and help us curate the Heritage Gallery, and then encourage people to seek more education. Like if you enjoy this exhibit, go to the Lombard Museum. If you enjoy this exhibit, go to the Historical Museum in DuPage, go to the neighbor settlement. So there's movement, instead of just a status. Here, look at this kiosk, there's movement, and there's also help in curating this exhibit. And my point of that is because, I think 3 months is too soon, but I think 40 years, like our current museum, the current heritage is too long. And finally, I'd just like to address, and you're right, member Zay, this is my opinion, but glaciers, what part of the world didn't have glaciers? I don't know of any, or tall grass or things like that. My goal is not to have geology of DuPage County. My goal is to have it more about people. People are what make communities rich, not glaciers, not tall grass. It's the people who came and built your railroads, who built your plank roads, who, became the first female lawyer, who became the first woman to vote in DuPage County. I mean, these are so much more important than a geological history of DuPage County.
Yeah. May I step in on the content for the glacier?
Sure.
The feedback that we got was that we want to start all the way back to the glaciers. And we thought, oh, well, that's pretty far back. But what we can do is put together why the land is such a great land due to the nutrition that nutrients that they put in the soil, which eventually led to farming and success of farming. And so that was how we understood it. This is the stage upon which DuPage County was benefited from. If the glacier did not come down to DuPage County, you would not necessarily be a farming community. And as far as where the glaciers ended, 90% of Illinois was once a glacier. So I don't want to give the false impression that we weren't listening or we think this is the idea, but this is what we got on our feedback for where to start. And as far as all of the other individuals that you named, when you said it's about the people, they are in there. From the first person voting, from the first female this, male that, and all of that, because this is about the people. And so I think one of the best things to do is to go through the outline, because this is an outline that started from a couple of books I got, and this outline kind of followed all of the input that everyone gave. But this is the time to look at that outline and say, you know what? We don't have enough Asian representation here. And you scratch that in. And so this is a work in progress. This is the first, in order for you to kind of reply to what we were thinking, is that's why we start this. This is where we're starting. And if you don't like this, cross it out. If you like to add some of these things, please add them. And that is how the outline will go back and forth and get closer and closer to what everyone wants. But to begin with, we needed something for you to react to. And we did the best we could as to what we thought you wanted with the feedback form. But the feedback form is not the feedback form after you look at the draft outline. That we're not saying that any of this is set in stone. Content continually develops. You know, you're going to see it 2 times more, and then you're going to see the text. And so this is not a thing that takes place in a couple of weeks. So I just want to empower the team to really get at it and tell us exactly through this content outline what is acceptable and what is not. And
Thanks.
sorry.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
All right, well, let me just finish
1
by
minute,
saying.
you got about
Let
1
me-
minute each.
it's
We got,
fine.
member Hire.
Question.
we
I'll
got
just say that,
Member Galassi, 1
thank you,
minute,
Peter.
and then
I-
member Ozai, 1 minute.
I will say really quickly, Peter, that, ever since I moved here to this area, I have heard that DuPage County has the richest soil in the country, so.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to say that while I'm incredibly fascinated by the glacial movement and how we had mammoths roaming this land way back when, we have to, again, as member you said, go back to why are we doing this? We're doing this so that all of the 421 people that are walking in through our galleries can have this feeling of belonging. And that's why the content is so important. So they come here on official work, they are stressed, and they come in and they see something that makes them feel like they belong in this building, and it puts a smile on their face. And no matter how challenging their day has been, they feel like they are part of this county, they belong in this building, and this is their space. I think if you look through that lens and focus on the content, we will have a good product on our hands.
I just want a clarification on the attendance that comes in each day. Is the 421 inclusive of employees, or is that like?
This is people that are screened, so you may have people that are screened regularly, for example, these guys are screened. So that's key, does not to differentiate why you're screened, just that you're screened.
Employees with badge in, and they wouldn't be screened, so this would be people who don't have a badge coming into 421.
People going to human.
Finally, member Ozai, and then I'm gonna wrap up.
You're going to
Okay.
Mary Keating's, for everybody, yep.
Interview and HR, anything.
I think that the goal of making sure that people understand the diversity in DuPage could be covered under, I really do like this layout, and I don't think it's gonna cost a wild amount of money, and I think it could be updated, but under cultivating communities, 2A, social development, there's no reason that we couldn't have one of these panels and we could discuss, you know, maybe the top 7 or 8 different ethnic groups and give a brief history, give a population percentage, et cetera. And that screen could be updated every 5 years or with a census or something, but it would at least let people know that who we are. And you could definitely do that right there under social development. So I like the general overall reach of it. And I think that we have to remember that, well, it isn't a lot of people who come through here. There are a lot of other venues for them to get history lessons. So this is, I think, pretty comprehensive. And I think we can definitely look at various communities, take the top 10 number of communities, et cetera. But I'm done because we have transportation next.
All right, I'm gonna wrap up with one thing is, I'm not really caught up in the design as I am with the content. And I'm not really caught up with the amount of people, because when I think about DuPage County, we have an ungodly amount of activities that flow through these grounds. And if we market it right and do it right, we can market it back to have people come through, even though they're here for veterans this or fairgrounds that. There could be screens directing people back to the back to the gallery if the content supports why they're here. Or people say, hey, you know what, hey, I'm here for the flea market, but hey, I think I want to go visit the Heritage Gallery, if the content is right. I think it's all going to tie back to our focus groups. That's where a lot of that's going to flush out. And I believe we're going to see a lot more foot traffic if we do this right.
So the next steps we have, Jeff, real quick before we end it.
So March 4th would be the part of the concept design process when we would invite members of the public, stakeholders, anyone interested, in person. Taylor Studio staff will be here. We probably set it up in this room again. If we gotta set the time, it'd probably be in the afternoon. It'll be a Tuesday afternoon, so you'll be here in the morning, and then anyone interested would stick around that afternoon. That's where we would have the direct discussion of all the priorities, the content. And following that, there will be a public online survey where we could also post signage in the Heritage Gallery for people walking by to jump in the survey. We could distribute that to employees. Again, museums, anybody else in the county who use the social media accounts also to get word on the street to
And my
participate.
appeal is that everybody in this room, make sure that you go out to the and have them come show up for that, because we need that information, we need that feedback.
So what I would like to do, because there was I really like the idea of like that whole spoken story, the history. The idea of having different videos, like maybe a 5-minute video for different parts of the year, depending on what it is. I would like to maybe explore what it would cost to, because that would be over and above what we're talking about, but I think it's important. There might be 10 or 15 videos we want to have in our library. Let's figure out what a 5-minute video would take of the experts putting it together for Black History Month or Asian Civic,
Oral history.
something, veterans, there's so many videos we could put together that would be far more specific than what we could ever put on any of these things. And a video that has people who live the history talking for 5 minutes. I mean, maybe we find out it's $10,000 a video, but that video is timeless and we can use it every year for that specific thing. And that would be on that big screen. But I think we should also explore what that would be to put together a 5-minute video, a 10-minute video.
Can I say something? There are a lot of museums. We said museums are involved. I know we're working with the DuPage Bar Association and the courts to put together a history of the old courthouse. There are a lot of those videos we can use from other museums that would cost you nothing, because we just want to get it out there.
And
So,
our
just
partnership
throwing it
with,
out there.
our partnership is rich. So that's the thing. And whatever we have, we would
And I
share
know
with
Walmart
all
has
the
And then we
museums
shared on
across.
social media as
Yeah.
well, so we get a lot of.
Okay, old business, being done, new business. Without objection, we are adjourned.
The chair